first element and the last element. It's asking us, do you want 4? Well, let's change 4 to 5, and then hit the Enter key. And as you can see, it updates to make 5 elements in the array, but there's space between the first element and the last element. Go ahead and click anywhere in the background. Now, if you want to undo anything, just like previous commands, you can undo what you just did by going to the ribbon all the way at the top on the Quick Options bar and clicking Undo. This will undo previous examples and steps that you did, backing up to where you first started. So in summary, what we covered in this lesson was the radial array command. We looked at 2 different methods of starting the array command, one by selecting the object first, and the other by starting the command first. And then we looked at 2 different spacings. We looked at creating a distance or a space, an angle if you will, between the first and second element, and then all subsequent elements have the same spacing. And we also looked at creating the spacing from the first element and the last element, and then all the other elements are placed in between. In this lesson, we'll cover the extend and trim command. Now, there are several extend and trim commands inside of Revit. Some let you extend and trim single items. Another command lets you extend and trim multiple items. There's also a command that allows you to make corner trims or corners, extending and trimming elements to a point. On the model on my screen right now, I have several walls, and some of these walls either need to be extended or some need to be trimmed. And we're going to first look at extending a wall. So on the left side of my shape or my space, I have a wall with an opening. And I would like to extend the horizontal wall where my mouse is at all the way over to the left vertical wall. To do that, I'm going to use the extend trim command for a singular element. On the ribbon, go to the Modify tab. Then on the Modify panel, select Trim Extend Single Element. The first thing Revit's going to want you to do is pick a boundary edge you're extending to. So I'm going to extend to the left vertical wall. So I'll select one side or the other side. In this case, I'm going to pick the inside of that vertical wall. Go ahead and pick it. After you do that, Revit is now going to ask you, what do you want to extend? So I'm going to move my mouse over the horizontal wall. Once you do, you see a dashed line extending it out. If that's what you want, go ahead and left-click that wall. That wall is then extended and cleaned up as it intersects the other wall on the left. Notice you're still in the trim command. To exit out of this, simply hit the Escape key or click the Modify button in the upper left. Now, trimming the wall to the right, the horizontal wall. I can see it extends through the vertical wall on the right, and I want to trim off the piece that's to the right of that wall where my mouse is at. So to do this, I can use the same command. So back on the Modify tab, in the Modify panel, choose Trim Extend Single Element. Just like we did the previous example, let's select the boundary edge. Except this time, this is going to be the trimming edge, where you're trimming. And I'm going to choose the right of the vertical wall. Go ahead and select it. Now, in the trim command in Revit, you pick next what you want to keep. So the part of the wall, the horizontal wall that is, that I want to keep is going to be the piece to the left of that boundary line I just chose. So I'll move my mouse over that part of the line. I see the dashed line appear, and go ahead and left-click it. I keep that piece, and the other part of the wall beyond the other boundary line is now deleted. Again, I'm still in the command. Hit the Escape key to exit the command. Now, on the very bottom of this model, I have 2 more walls that extend to the outside, and I need to trim those walls. Once again, you could use the same command and execute it twice, but Revit has a command that allows you to do multiple trims or multiple extends in one step. To do that, let's select, again from the Modify tab, Modify panel, choose the Trim Extend Multiple Elements button. Same as last time, let's choose the boundary edge that's going to do the trimming. Choose the right of the vertical wall, and now Revit wants you to pick or window select the elements that you want to trim. Now, since this is a multiple trim command, I can make a selection window around the elements that I want to trim off. So to do that, hold the left mouse button down in an open area and drag your mouse And what'll happen is you actually create that selection window. It'll highlight the elements that you're going to keep within the trim. And then once you release the mouse, it keeps those elements and trims off everything to the other side of the boundary. Just like in the previous command, you're still in the command. To exit, hit the escape key or the modify key. Now, let's say we need to make a corner, or we need to trim two elements, two walls in this case, in a 90-degree corner. For example, on the very top, I have this horizontal wall on the right, and I want to extend it and trim it into this vertical wall in the middle. So to do that, I'm going to use a third command, again on the Modify tab, Modify panel. This one is Trim Extend to Corner. Go ahead and select that. For this command, pick the two elements I just highlighted. Choose the vertical wall in the middle, then pick the horizontal wall on the right. Once you mouse over it, you see the dashed line appear, showing me where it's going to be extended and then trimmed into the other walls. Go ahead and pick it. And you see those two walls now are extended and trimmed and cleaned up with the other walls. And lastly, you're still in the command, so to exit out of the command, hit the escape key. So in this lesson, we looked at different ways to trim and extend walls or beams or other linear objects inside of Revit. We looked at trimming and extending single walls, singular linear objects. We also looked at how to do a multiple trim, and we also looked at how to corner trim or corner extend objects into a 90-degree angle or whatever angle they meet at in a corner. In this lesson, we'll cover using the Align tool to align various objects in your Revit model to one another. For example, on my screen, I have 4 diffusers. Those are the squares with the X's. And I would like to align them with each other horizontally and vertically. To do that, we'll use the Align tool. So to start the Align tool, let's go to the Modify tab on your ribbon. Then in the Modify panel, let's click Align. Now when you start the Align tool, Revit is going to ask you what do you want to align to. So in this case, I'm going to pick the end result first of whatever I'm aligning to. So let's say we want to align the top 2 diffusers horizontally. And the one that is correct is going to be the one on the right. So I'm going to move my mouse over one of the lines on the diffuser on the right, either the top, the horizontal in the middle, or the horizontal on the bottom. Doesn't matter. So I'm going to just choose the top horizontal line of the diffuser on the right. Now that's what I'm aligning to. You'll see an alignment line appear. Revit now is asking me to select whatever you want to align to it. So in this case, this is the diffuser on the left. I'm going to pick the same horizontal line on the diffuser on the left because it's going to align that line with the first line that I chose from the diffuser on the right. So go ahead and select that horizontal line on the top of the diffuser on the left. And now you see those two are aligned. Now you do have one other symbol that appears. It's a padlock. The padlock will lock these two elements in a horizontal position, meaning if one moves, the other moves. If you don't choose the padlock, they're free to move about once again, and they can come or go out of alignment. But just to show how this works with the padlock, if you click the padlock, it now becomes locked. Let's deselect just by clicking anywhere in the background. And then to exit out of the alignment tool, hit escape. Now, if you go to move one of these actual diffusers, just click the diffuser on the left. Now with it highlighted, just hold the left mouse button down and move it up. And as you can see, the diffuser on the right moves up and down with it. Now, you can move the diffuser on the left back and forth, right and left, and it doesn't affect the diffuser on the right. Release, just let go of your mouse, and to deselect, just hit escape. Now, let's say you want to align the diffuser on the right with the diffuser on the right bottom. So let's start the alignment tool once again. Modify tab, modify panel, click align. Let's say the diffuser on the top is the correct one. So I'm going to choose one of the lines on the diffuser. I'm going to pick the vertical line on the right. That's now my alignment line, and you see a dashed line appear. One thing to note, if you wanted to make multiple alignments in one step, There is a checkbox on the options bar for multiple alignments. If you selected that, this would allow you to make multiple elements align with one another. In this case, we don't have multiple elements. I just have the one. So I'll select my alignment line. Then I'll move to the second object that I want to move to be in alignment. Select the same relative position, or in this case, the same line, and it will move. And once again, I have the padlock if I want to lock these two together. So in those two examples, I was able to create the two elements by dragging and then locking them together in position. So if I move one, the other one moves. Likewise, if I select the top, you can see how both of these are actually locked together in position from the other two. So in summary, what we looked at in this example was using the Align tool to align various elements with each other inside of Revit. In this lesson, we'll cover the Offset command. The Offset command can be used in Revit to offset things such as walls or beams parallel to each other, so a given distance to one side or the other side. The offset command will allow you to make a copy of the element being offset or to move the element being offset. You can also set the numeric distance to offset before you enter the command, or you can actually enter the offset distance on the screen. So to get started, let's go to the Modify tab on the ribbon, go to the Modify panel, and then click Offset. Now on the options bar right below the ribbon, you have two options on the left. One graphical, one numerical. Graphical means you'll enter the offset distance on the screen. Numerical means you'll enter the offset distance right here in the offset box. So for the first example, let's choose numerical and set the offset distance to 12 feet. Now you also have a checkbox for copy. Copy means you'll actually make a copy of the element being offset. For this example, let's choose copy. Move your mouse over the wall all the way on the right, the vertical wall. As you can see, as you move to one side of the wall and the other side of the wall, a dashed line appears. This is the side that the wall will be offset to. So if you want to offset this wall to the left of itself, in this case 12 feet, since 12 feet is set, move your mouse slightly to the left of the wall. On the right, you'll see the dashed line appear to the left, then left-click your mouse. It offsets that wall. Now note you're still in the offset command, so you could offset this wall once again. But let's say you don't want to copy a wall, you just want to move a wall, but we're still in the same command. So uncheck mark copy on the option bar. Move your mouse now over the vertical wall all the way on the left. Slide to the left of it so you see the wall is being offset to the left, where the dashed line appears. Once you see that, go ahead and left click. Now since I did not have copy checked, it offset that wall, but it actually moved it. It didn't copy it. Now to end the command, simply hit the escape key. Now let's look at the offset command again, but we'll choose the graphical option of the offset. So go to the Modify tab, Modify panel, click Offset. This time choose Graphical and leave Copy unchecked. The first thing Revit wants you to do is to pick whatever you want to offset. So in this case, let's pick the vertical wall on the left. It's now highlighted. The second thing it wants you to do is to actually click 2 points. And the 2 points will define the distance from which you're offsetting. So I'm just going to pick the left side of the vertical wall. Now start to drag your mouse one direction or the other direction parallel to the wall you just picked, and you see a dimension appear. This is now the offset distance. Drag your mouse out to about 11 feet. Now copy is not selected, so this is actually going to be a move within the offset. So once you see 11 feet, go ahead and left click. And then it copied based on that distance. Now you're still inside of the actual command. So for example, I can choose copy now. Move your mouse over the exact same wall, select it. Again, it's asking you to define 2 points for the dimensional distance. Move over the left side of the vertical wall on the left. Drag your mouse to the right till you get to about 10 feet. Now with copy selected, Once you click now, it actually makes a copy in that distance 10 feet. Now to end the command, simply hit the escape key. So as a review, in this lesson, we looked at the offset command. We looked at utilizing the offset command in multiple ways. One was keying in the distance before we chose anything to offset, and then everything we offset was offset at that distance. Another method was choosing something and then defining the distance we're offsetting actually on the screen. We also looked at the difference between copying something when we're offsetting, meaning it makes a copy of itself, or we looked at the other option of not copying, meaning you're offsetting but technically moving the object. In this lesson, we'll discuss rehosting elements. So you may be asking, well, hosting an element, and then what is rehosting an element? Look at my screen right now. You see a desk, and the desk is sitting on a slab. The slab is connected to level 1. We're in line with level 1. There's also a slab sitting up here at level 2. Think of them as floor 1 and floor 2. Well, right now the desk is bound or hosted on level 1, specifically the slab connected to level 1. And the desk, you see, you can move it back and forth. It stays on level 1 or what it's hosted to. I can't move it up or down off of that host. This is an example of what rehosting would be if you want to move the desk from level 1 to level 2. Now to see this, how it's actually hosted, go ahead and click the desk and then look at the properties on the left. You can see the constraint level is level 1, and it's saying it's hosted on the floor generic 12, which is this floor or slab that's connected to level 1. Now I want to move that. I want to rehost it to level 2. So with the desk selected, go up to the ribbon all the way to the right and click Pick New Host. Now after you choose Pick New Host, Revit is waiting for you to pick the new host to attach the desk to. Well, I'm going to pick this other slab to the upper left. Go ahead and pick it. Once you do that, it rehosts the desk to the new slab, specifically level 2. And you can see now I can move it in line with level 2 as it's now bound to that slab that's connected to level 2. Once you select on the desk, you can see now the constraint level is level 2 and specifically this slab. Now this is one example of rehosting. Another example is when you're working with multiple disciplines, such as using Revit MEP. It's also you're working with, let's say, an architect using Revit architecture. Let's say you're placing Revit mechanical equipment, a diffuser or a sprinkler head or a wall sconce, and you're placing it on the floor, on the ceiling, or on the wall, but the architect moves that wall or deletes that ceiling. Well, what happens then is those elements, the mechanical equipment or electrical or plumbing equipment, lose their host. They don't go away, they just actually lose their host, so they're floating. That is another example of rehosting where you have to reattach them to a host, to a wall, or to a ceiling, or to a floor. So in this example, we looked at rehosting. We looked at what is hosting, how to rehost, and we talked about several different examples. The one being moving this desk from one level to another level, and also in a multidisciplinary environment where you're working with mechanical people, architectural people, and one or the other remove the host of specific components that you're placing. In this lesson, we'll cover creating groups, specifically model groups. You may ask yourself, what is a group and what is a model group? Well, a group in Revit is a way to combine elements together so they remain as one entity or move as one entity. For example, on my screen, I have 4 diffusers. Those are the squares with the X's in them. And I want to make them all one or move as one entity. I can create a group of them. Right now, they're all individual. So if you click one, it moves independently. And just to illustrate that, if I click on it, I see I can move this one and it has no bearing on the other ones. Now, a model group is a group made of model items, such as these diffusers. You also have detail groups. And a detail group is a group of detail items such as text or tags, like door tags or window tags. In this example, though, we're going to make a model group. So to make a model group, let's go to the Modify tab, and then all the way on the right in the Create panel, click Create Group. First thing Revit is going to ask you is, what do you want to name your group? And do you want it to be model or detail based? Well, I'm going to leave mine called Group 1, and I'm going to have it selected as model based group. Click OK. Now the group editing toolbar appears, and we need to add elements to the group. So click Add. Now to add elements to the group, I just have to select the elements that I want to be in this group. So I'm going to go ahead and pick on each of the 4 diffusers. With all 4 selected, click Finish. Now, visually it looks the same, but if you try to move one of the actual diffusers, you'll actually notice a dashed line appears around that, signifying they're in a group. You'll also see that in the Properties box on the left. And if you try to move these, they all move as one entity. Now, the group can be edited. So whenever you select a group, you could edit it by choosing Edit Group in the upper right portion of the ribbon. Once you select Edit Group, the Edit Group toolbar appears again. Let's say we want to remove one of the diffusers from this group. So I'm going to click Remove. Then I'm going to pick the diffuser in the upper right. It changes to a shaded color. Click Finish. Now that one diffuser is removed from the group. So if you click on one of the other diffusers and go to Move, you'll see that those 3 move now, still in unison, while the one removed from the group is no longer part of it. Then you also can ungroup whatever is in your group. So if you select your group, you can click Ungroup on the toolbar to the right on the ribbon, and that will ungroup all of your elements back to their individual state. So in this lesson, we looked at creating model-based groups. Model-based groups being anything that is in your Revit model, such as diffusers, or walls, or doors. The detail group is elements that are not model-based, such as text or tags. We looked at how to add elements to the group, how to remove elements from the group, and then we also looked at how to ungroup those elements that were originally added to the group. In this lesson, we're going to have a brief discussion on groups and best practices with groups. In one of the earlier lessons, we looked at creating a group by selecting the elements and then clicking the group icon and grouping elements together. Well, you can actually place that group. In this example, I have a group of the 4 diffusers. To see that, I could just move over one of the diffusers and click. I can see the group. To place a model group, on the Architecture tab on the ribbon, right in the middle in the model area, I could choose the model drop-down and click Place Group. This would allow me to place the group somewhere else within this project, kind of like making a copy of it, if you will. Now, that worked fine in my example. I didn't see any broken references or any other constraint issues because the elements I combined were singular. They were all the same type, and they weren't bound to any walls or any other type of elements. So what about the best practices? Well, be smart about what you put in a group and how you organize those groups. For example, don't put everything in a group. Don't put your walls and your floors and railings and ceilings and stairs or anything else all in the same group. Because if you do what I just did by making a copy and placing the group in another instance, if you place it, let's say, on a different level, that group is going to have constraint issues. Also, think about how you're organizing the elements in your group. Think about what piece parts are in there. For the walls, maybe you do need the slabs inside of that group as well as supporting constrained elements that the walls are bound to. Now, speaking of walls and groups, if you are putting walls in groups, make sure you set your walls to have unconnected heights, because then they're less constrained. Because if they're connected to a specific level and you copy that group to another level, you're going to have constraint issues. Also, make sure that there are no pre-existing errors or warnings with any elements you're putting inside of the group. And lastly, if you're using joins with walls, disallow any joins for the walls that you have in a group to the walls you have outside of the groups. So these were just some of the things that go into best practices with groups. While groups are very powerful and very useful, you also have to be very cautious on what you're putting into the group and what downstream issues you can have as you use your groups in other areas.